Mr. Bardetti is a police officer who lives and works in Italy. He joined the Metropolitan Police Service 23 years ago after graduating from the University of London, where he read law. After an initial 2 years on the beat as a British Bobby, he swapped his police uniform for jeans and a t-shirt and then a suit, the essential uniform for a detective, and began his career investigating fraud, burglaries and drug trafficking crimes. In his early police service, he completed his Masters in Criminal Justice Policy at the London School of Economics and Political Sciences, and then progressed his detective career. He has worked in North and Central London and spent time working overseas. However, this is his first posting overseas with his family. Mr. Bardetti is a Detective Chief Inspector at New Scotland Yard, which is the headquarters for Metropolitan Police Service. He likes to be interrupted, so please ask questions as you go along. Thank you, and please welcome Mr. Bardetti.
I like to be interrupted, She wrote that one. Hello everyone, my name is Marco Bardetti, I'm Italian origin, so I'll speak really quick. I've had no coffee today, so I'm going to try to keep slow. We're going to go through a bit of a story about the Metropolitan Police. We are not the only police in Britain, as we'll explain later, but obviously I've got a vested interest, having been an officer for 23 years. And you may think, why on earth is a London police officer here in Italy? So I work here across 5 countries, making sure that the police services across Italy, Albania, San Marino, the Vatican and Malta, that we all work closely with Britain. That's my job as a liaison officer. So if we start with the police, we're not the oldest police service in the world. The Carabinieri have got over 200 years service. However, we were the first civilianised police service in the modern era, and we were set up by this gentleman here, who was Sir Robert Peel, who was the Home Secretary and Prime Minister twice under Queen Victoria's reign. And London in the 1820s was known as being a den of iniquity. It was known as being the thieves' kitchen. London was not a nice place. The population was increasing by a fifth every decade. Crime was going up, and it wasn't a nice place to be. So to combat the rising crime, Sir Robert Peel introduced what is a civilianised police service. And we've got some principles in our police service, which are the 9 Peel principles after Sir Robert Peel. But the overriding principle is that we police by consent. And so, as you'll see, we are not armed. The day that we joined the police service, we're given a truncheon. This was my original wooden truncheon. It wasn't used much. After a few years, we got a plastic truncheon, and now we have the metal baton that pops out that you see on TV quite a bit. But that's what we joined, and that's what my colleagues got in 1829 when we started the police. The early police also had swords as well. We don't have swords now. And we also get a pair of handcuffs. These are the modern handcuffs that we have now. I have a key in case anyone wishes to try one on later. And we were also given a whistle. And this is a symbolic appointment, we call it, that we must all carry when we're a police officer in a bobby uniform. We were given a whistle on a chain, which we used to call our colleagues. Now we have radios and phones, but we still should carry the whistle everywhere we go. I do, because I like tradition. I said bobbies because Sir Robert Peel, the nickname for Robert is Bobby, and we became known by the general public as the bobbies. And the bobbies wore a bobby hat. You can pass this round if you want. Here you go. So that's my second hat. My first hat was stolen from a police canteen. Never leave police uniform lying around. That's my second hat. It was designed as a top hat, you can see from the pictures here. And the idea was that there was canes inside, wooden canes, that would act as a protection. So it wasn't quite a military helmet, but it was a protection helmet. And the idea, apparently, was that it was so tall and strong so that a police officer could place it on the floor to stand on it to look over fences. Back in the 1820s, in fact, until about 25 years ago, to be a police officer, you had to be a minimum height. You had to be 6 foot tall until 1992. So I was easy. I was always going to be in the police because my height is slightly above 6 foot, but you had to be quite tall. So Sir Robert Peel, He's got an old house in London. If you're ever near Grosvenor Square in London, his house can be visited. There's a blue plaque outside it. But when the police first came into power, we weren't that popular. Strange to believe today. And so there was a campaign to get rid of the police. We were seen as being an oppressive arm of the state, or seen as being the baddies, led by one of the government's puppets to go around arresting people and torturing people. But as we see the presentation, we're unarmed, we've got a lot of power individually, but we don't act as a military force in our country. So you might have seen this before somewhere else. Does anyone know what this is?
It's a TARDIS.
It is a TARDIS. Well done, well done. That is a TARDIS. What else might it be called? It's a police box. These police boxes used to exist around London until about 20 years ago, and inside was a phone for the officer to call up his station, and there was also some writing materials and pens and pencils. There's only 2 left in London now operational. One's at our police training school in Hendon, and the other one's inside Scotland Yard. And they're symbolic. There were symbolic reference points for the people of London to go to call the police, or for the police to call the headquarters. On the left-hand side, you have your classic picture of the British Bobby. You'll see these ones had pointed helmets. They also had very stiff leather collars. And I'm told that they had stiff leather collars as it was a defence mechanism, because back in those days, people used to like strangling police officers from behind with a cord, and so the leather collars were there to protect your neck. The tunic and the trousers were made of very stiff material, again as a type of body armour, but all it was material. And the officers starting getting paid about £1 a week in today's money. That's what they earned, which was a good wage in 1829. So these are appointments, the various articles which you carry. Ladies and gentlemen had a different type of baton. So this is a gentleman's baton. The ladies' baton was slightly shorter. And ladies also had a handbag as well. And they were encouraged, until 20 years ago, this is true, they were encouraged to place the baton in the handbag and swing the handbag if confronted by a larger thief. True. This is the myth. So the myth is that New Scotland Yard is known for Sherlock Holmes, that the police are like CSIs, I think that's CSI New York or Miami, that we solve all our crimes in 50 minutes from going that start the crime, that we race around in nice red and white Starsky and Hutch sports cars, that's for me, and that we always circle the body of a homicide with chalk. We don't do that. I don't know where that's come from. I've never seen it in Britain ever. I've never seen it overseas ever. We do not put chalk around the body. We don't do it. In Italy, Dylan Dog, which is a comic book, it's infamous as being linked to Scotland Yard. It's a question I get asked most of my Italian police colleagues: have you read Dylan Dog? So this one is about the crime of Scotland Yard particularly. I'm going to show you a video now which tells you about the more modern police service. It's only 2 minutes. 3 years ago, the BBC followed the Metropolitan Police for a year. They followed lots of us in the police. They followed me, but my episode was cut because my court case didn't finish in time, so they couldn't show my case on TV. But anyway, the first episode shows where I worked in London till 2 years ago, which is an area called Tottenham in Haringey. And this gives you a 2 minutes introduction to the police and the challenges that we face in London. My beautiful assistant will press play.
London, one of the most diverse cities in the world. Home to 8 million people from over 200 nationalities. The task of protecting them falls to 49,000 men and women. The Met is the country's biggest police force.
Hello, sir. You all right?
It deals with more crime than anywhere else in Britain. In a single year, they're called to over 100 murders. 70,000 robberies and burglaries, and make over 228,000 arrests.
You don't want any risks of you running off again. There's all these people enjoying the sun. That's the rest of them.
But this is a force under pressure. Facing daily criticism for a service stretched too thin.
I no longer have any confidence in our Metropolitan Police Force.
Seen by some in the community as the enemy. Policing London is a unique challenge.
That way. I'm completely lost now.
Dealing with life, death, crime and its victims.
It's okay, we'll be alright. Okay, we'll look after you, don't worry.
24 hours a day.
We've got police on their way. They're going to come and help you, okay?
It's a good series. If you get a chance to see that series, it's quite good. I don't normally say that about police series. Okay, first quiz question. There's 5 ladies on the screen. We have the Queen. The Queen is our monarch. She's also... I wear her crest on my helmet. This is lady's helmet, obviously. But on the police helmet, it's got E to R, Elizabeth reigns II. I wear the crest on my helmet. On the left-hand side, we have the Prime Minister, Theresa May, who used to be the Home Secretary. Very relevant because the Home Secretary set up the police and is responsible for the police. On the right-hand side, we have the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police, who's a lady called Cressida Dick. Mom, she's Mom to me. She came to Rome 2 months ago and spent 3 days here meeting the Italian police, the Italian Carabinieri, the Pope, and various ambassadors here in Rome. And it was a big coup to have the Commissioner come for her first trip to Europe, to Italy. Bottom right-hand corner, we have the current Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, who helps select the Commissioner. And on the left, who have we got, young ladies? Who's this? Meghan Markle. So, which is the odd one out? You can't answer the question. It's not Meghan Markle. Yes. Which is the odd one out? The Prime Minister, the Queen, the Commissioner, the Home Secretary, or the soon-to-be Princess?
Soon-to-be princess.
No. No. Go on. Why? She's not going to the wedding. That's true. It's just broken the Sky News that Theresa May is not going to the wedding. Not invited. Right, the odd one out is the Queen. Because all the other people there are British citizens now, including Meghan Markle. She's ours now. She's converted to be a British citizen. The Queen is not a citizen because the Queen is a monarch. So the Queen doesn't have a passport. That's a cheap answer, wasn't it? But it's true. All the other British, and the reason I make that is that to be a British police officer, you don't have to be a British citizen. We changed the rules 12 years ago to include colleagues from Australia, the former empire, Canada, New Zealand, India, Pakistan. And then a few years ago, we included every nationality can join the Metropolitan Police Service. In fact, any nationality can join any police service in England, Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland, which is quite innovative. And we've done that to make sure that London, the police in Manchester, the police in Liverpool, that they represent the communities visibly that they police. So London, as you saw from the previous slides, nearly 9 million people, 270 nationalities. I'm Italian origin, half Italian, half British. I'm an Italian-British cop representing the Italian-British cops of London. And we've now replicated that across the whole of the police service. So Meghan Markle, if she wanted to be, could join the police service in the future. I'm sure she won't, but if she wanted to, she'd be more than welcome. As I said, we're not armed as a police. These are our ninjas, our firearms officers, who are very heavily armed and are the ones that you'll see on TV, entering premises and stopping cars with guns in. As a detective, I didn't carry a firearm, I didn't even carry a baton. I'd be way, way behind these very brave ladies and gentlemen that carried guns that would enter a house for me or stop a car for me. In London, we've got 32,000 police officers, and the estimated figures that we're happy to release is that no more than 10% are armed in the police service. And for us, that's just about working right now. There's a big debate in our country, which resurfaces every few months, which is, should the police be armed? And one of the questions I get from police colleagues I meet around the world is, how on earth do you police without a gun? And it's because we're used to it. It's our principles of policing with consent. And lots of us don't want to carry a firearm either. Detective world. As a detective, there are 3 core sources of evidence. This is across the world in a military police force or civilian police force. The 3 core sources of evidence start with your witnesses. Your witnesses is your victim or your witness, who saw something or heard something that can help you as a detective answer the questions who, what, why, when, where and how. I put a cup of tea there because you can always solve a problem with a cup of tea. If anyone saw the school play with Mrs. Potts recently, Beauty and the Beast, I giggled because we love cups of tea as police officers. And I've drunk lots of cups of tea with my victims and witnesses, talking to them, calming them down, reassuring them, and asking them to tell me their story. Because their story for me is critical. It's the basis of your investigation. If your victim or witness is reluctant or can't or won't talk to you, then your case is weak. Then you won't get them justice. And we join the police to seek justice. That's why I joined. So we've now adapted how we deal with victims and witnesses. We not only sit and talk to you and take statements, we also video interview you as well in what's quite a structured conversation, where it takes much more time, but you're much more relaxed. And we'll also interview you over a series of sit-ins, where particularly if you've suffered a traumatic attack or you've witnessed a traumatic, difficult incident, we'll speak to victims in small chunks to slowly draw out their story in their own words. So witnesses are key to an investigation. Forensic. This is how we're having to adapt. Scotland Yard will claim in the 1850s to have identified the first fingerprints from a burglary in Denmark Hill in South London. And when we arrested the burglar, acting upon police intelligence, we then took a set of his fingerprints and compared it to the crime scene and matched the burglar to the crime scene. Any scientists in the room? Any scientists? Locard's principle. Locard said that for every contact there will be a trace. And so we know that if a victim or suspect enter a crime scene, there's a good opportunity, fantastic opportunity, that they'll leave a trace of themselves behind. Fingerprints are fantastic, blood is even better, filaments of hair are fantastic too, parts of your clothing, footmarks, all these elements we can extract from a crime scene and we can then try to match it to our criminal at a later stage. Forensics is developing dramatically though, and so what we ask police officers now is to come to the police with some background learning, some background life experience. If they come as science graduates, that's fantastic. If they come as lawyers, that's good as well. If they come with people skills, that's critical. We need police officers that can talk to the public and relate to people. Finally, passive. Passive is the term we use for all the evidence that exists around us. Who's got a phone on them now? Everyone's got phones. Phones have trackings on them, phones have records on them, phones have receipts. Phones are a great way for us to track people, but also for us to find out who their loved ones are. If we have a body and a phone, I've got a phone to contact next of kin, to contact their family. Passive is also money. We're getting very good at following money. There was a fantastic presentation here just over a month ago on bitcoins. I was sitting watching the Bitcoin presentation, taking notes, because Bitcoins is a whole new world. But you can trace. Every transaction of money leaves a trace. CCTV. In Britain, we have billions, I'm going to say, billions of CCTV cameras. There's far less CCTV cameras in Europe, on Western Europe. It's far less in Italy, Germany and France in particular. But in Britain, in London, if you walk from a train station 100 yards to a bus stop, you'll be captured by cameras everywhere. Private cameras, public cameras, dashboard cameras, cameras on phones. This is all evidence that we have to collate as police officers. Whether there's something on it or nothing on it, my duty as a cop, as a police officer, is to collate all the evidence that may prove or disprove a person's guilt. prove or disprove their involvement in an offence. That's a lot of CCTV to seize, a lot of phones to seize and download, a lot of witnesses to speak to. So if we have a murder in the street of 100 houses, every house gets visited by a copper knocking on the door, asking the members of the house, what did you see at this time of date and place? If they're not there, you have to go back to speak to that person. Because if you don't ask that person something, you might be missing evidence that might prove someone's guilt or prove their innocence. So as a detective, it starts with the search. So we saw on the moving video the officers in blue clothing, the blue suit, like a baby grown or a onesie. That is a forensic suit. So when we conduct a search on premises, we cover ourselves from head to toes in a plastic suit, plastic or rather paper suit. We put masks on, we put hair nets on, we put plastic covers over our shoes, we wear at least 2 pairs of gloves, and we search a scene meticulously. We do it so that we don't leave any of our hair, blood, DNA behind at that crime scene. We then package every exhibit into a particular box or a crate or a carton. So that exhibit doesn't rot, it doesn't contaminate with other exhibits, it can't be interfered with. And then we store a lot of exhibits until we can work out how important that exhibit is to the case. This is the background work, which hasn't got easier over time. In fact, we've made it more difficult because in Britain we're pretty good at forensics because we've been challenged and criticised so much 20, 30 years ago in the courts that we've refined our processes now where if we seize an exhibit, we're happy that no one's going to contaminate or dirty that exhibit for us. And then you come to the interview. Now, an interview in Britain is called an interview. In Italy, it's called an interrogatorio, an interrogation. It's a different style of interview. But in English language, an interview is an interview and we can't interrogate. There are many rules, procedures as to how we can interview people. Because in Britain, the police officer has the power to stop a person, search them, arrest them, bring them to a police station, deprive them of their liberty for a period of time, and interview them. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, it's the prosecuting magistrate who's the officer in the case that will work with the police to ask them to fulfil certain functions. In Britain, we've got a lot of power, but always controlled by a court and by senior officers reviewing what we're doing and checking what we're doing. 2000. Who remembers this film? Look how young he looked there. Look how young. The reason why I put this up is that in 2000, do you remember these? Now, who had this phone here? Nokia 3210. Classic phone. Classic. Lasted the whole 2 weeks. Had one game, was Snake, I think it was called. Fantastic, wasn't it? This one here? Who had that one there? I don't know. Oh, well done, man. Read one. This one here? It's 1998 now. This was a Nokia. The aerial popped up as you pulled it up. I had that. I had that. I had that. That was my first phone I bought, my first pay packet. Was that one there? In 95 I bought that. 92? Who had that one? You are fantastic. Did you have this one? Did you have that one? Oh, okay. Excellent. Excellent. My dad was a driving instructor, so he had a car phone that was like a big car battery that he carried in the car with 2 hands every day. The reason why I put this is that these were our phones 18, 17 years ago. There wasn't a lot of data on these phones. There wasn't a lot of information we could get off the phones. But now, we've got these little babies. We've got the iPhone X's or iPhone X's. There's more data capacity of this phone than famously put the space shuttle on the moon. So we have to deal with that as cops. I have to be able to analyse the data on that phone to prove or disprove a person's involvement. I need to read all that data because it might prove a person's defence, and my job is to prove or disprove their involvement in the offence. It's also making things more complicated for me because with phones comes more crime. So now we have mobile phone theft. Whereas really speaking, back when we had these babies, no one was really stealing these. This one, I got it for free in a cornflakes packet. It was yellow. I've got a picture of it still. Kellogg's cornflakes gave away that phone for free with cornflakes. It was so easy. And the charger as well. So the world has changed for us. As detectives, we've had to evolve. We've had to get our heads around phones and phone data and the fact that the generations now don't communicate by contact, they communicate by Snapchat. What else do you call it? Instagram. What else?
WhatsApp.
What's that? Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. All these terms that we've had to get used to, even people of my age. So what it comes down to is that, and my colleague there on the left-hand side featured one of the TV programmes, is that we lock up the bad people so that people like you can sleep safe and sound. That's one of the things that helps us sleep at night, knowing that we go home and we've done what we can to make the world a little bit safer in whichever way we can. And the quote on the right, I quite like it because this was obviously a time traveller quote. It's a quote by Sir Robert Peel, and it says that one day the world will be all a Twitter with my principles of modern policing. All a Twitter. See, there's time travellers out there. So I'm going to open the floor up now for questions, whilst my assistant here flips to the other presentation where there's some questions to answer the quiz on the photographs. Would you flip it for us, Sim? Any questions at all? Yes?
One of the things that I've been reading is that because of technology, a lot of the police are ending up more in technology and coming off the beat and not so visible on the streets. And that now they're actually trying to put more police back on the streets because there is still violent crime as opposed to pure technological. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, when I joined the police 23 years ago, we had the first computers, and we were told this will create the paperless office. Do you remember that phrase? Adults in the room, the paperless office. No, it's creating more paper and more bureaucracy. But what we've done, and in London, in the last year, we've equipped 20,000 tablets to our officers on the street. So when a police officer comes to report a crime now, they can sit down and talk to you, they can take pictures with the tablet, they can show you maps so you can describe where you were, they can write a statement, so you don't have to go to the police station, you can write it home and sign it electronically. They can email you a copy of the crime report, so we're not posting you stuff anymore. So things got a little bit easier. What we've done is that we've tried to reduce over the last 10 years the amount of people that stay in the office though. Detective work though keeps you inside. So when I was my first 2 years as a beat bobby out in the street, I was much slimmer, I was doing lots of running around. You become a detective, you're inside. You're inside examining exhibits, processing them, writing interview plans, just like you write an essay plan, guys. You've got to write an interview plan, trust me, it's the same thing. It's good skills, don't it? All good skills. And then you have to interview people, and that takes time. I've now seen the dip come back, and now it's getting easier. Now the cops are spending less time in the office and more time dealing with prisoners, more time going to court, more time back in the street. The dips come back our way because we've got technology now in cars and officers. So it's getting better. I'll just show you some pictures here. Okay, guess the event for this. When was this event? Miss Karen already knows the answer, so she can't answer. Not Coronation, although it's... Who said that? You said the Beatles? Get in there. It is. So that's the Beatles. That's the Beatles outside Buckingham Palace. That's the Beatles were here, obviously. Those all here. And this is the general public trying to keep the police trying to keep them back. And this is a true picture. I thought it was a made-up picture years ago. But it shows the Beatles coming to London outside Buckingham Palace. Yeah, well done. You get a prize for that. You get a prize for that. Okay. So this is what. So prior to the police, we had the night. There was the night watchman. They were like town guards that were hired by the town. Historically, they were frequently drunk because it was cold, so they drank alcohol to keep them warm. Why do people think that's true? Obviously, this watchman had a cutlass sword. He had a small dagger sword as well. He's a rather old gentleman. I wouldn't fancy his chances chasing a young burglar. And these were the night watchmen before the Peel police, before the modern police came into action. There was also lots of private detectives around the world. In America, we had the Pinkerton's Detective Agency, which is famous, which still exists to this very day, where you hire a private detective to investigate your crime. But it was all very much unorganised. This was our first black lady police officer in 1968. Prior to that, women could join the police service. However, they weren't allowed to become police officers. They were administrative staff. They were in charge of secretaries, or they were in charge of storage. We worked out that women rule the world. As you can see from my slide, with the Prime Minister and the Queen and the Princess. And so in 1968, the first black officer, lady officer, joined the Metropolitan Police. And after 4 years of us, she went to work in Jamaica. And she was a nurse before that. So again, complete public service. We were called the Peelers and the Bobbies by the general public. The Peelers because it was Sir Robert Peel, and the Bobbies, as I said, because of Sir Robert Peel again, with this very ornate uniform, which has changed quite a lot over the years. Okay, so we also do guards duty. Which address is this gentleman walking out of?
10 Downing Street.
Which was it? 10 Downing Street. It is 10 Downing Street. Well done. You get price for that book. Big price, prices. 10 Downing Street. So Winston Churchill, we have, in London, we do a lot of guards duty. Generally unarmed, but Downing Street will have officers armed and unarmed. We guard the palaces, we guard the Parliament, we guard diplomatic premises, just like you see around Rome here. We'll be outside schools, just like you have police officers outside this school regularly as well. Okay, who's this lady? I'll give you a clue. It's about 1918, 100 years ago. So think of the image here. We've got a petite lady. Miss Cameron knows, but you can't answer this. You know, I've told you already. I've told you. Oh, you told me. You told me. You did. So think of the scene 100 years ago. It's London. We've got a petite lady surrounded by these big, burly police officers with big moustaches, looking aggressive. The detective is this guy here. The detective, the guy in the suit. Petite lady, piece of paper scrolled up in her hand. Maybe she's a campaigner. Suffragette. Which suffragette?
Emily.
Emily! Emily. Whisper, no, the artist. Emily Pankhurst. So, Emily Pankhurst was arrested by the police famously in 1918 for protesting outside Parliament. Lead suffragette is now a monument to her right outside Parliament on Parliament Green. So again, we were an instrument of the state. It was our job to police public protest. Whether you agree or not with the protest in place, your job as a copper, as a police officer, is to uphold the law fairly but firmly. And so the officers on that day were under instruction to arrest Emily Pankhurst because she was protesting outside Parliament. I'm sure they weren't that popular for doing it, but they had to do their job on the day. And this is a phrase that we like to use a lot, the long arm of the law. I love old cartoons. And this was an old cartoon where we joked about the police being taller than the general public, about the police catching the small, miserable criminals, the police having long, tall arms. And it's where one of the phrases for us is, we are the long arm of the law. It's one of the nicer terms that people use to describe the police. There's other words they sometimes use as well. And this is my favourite picture. This shows Whitehall. It shows ladies on mounted horse, mounted patrol. Two ladies on mounted patrol in the 70s in Whitehall with Big Ben in the background. The police have now come full circle. You can be any nationality to join the police. Ladies and gentlemen have the same opportunities. Until the 60s, until 1948, ladies couldn't be detectives. They were seen as not being robust or strong enough to deal with difficult criminals. Similarly, you can now join the police from 18 years old to 57 years old. The normal retirement age in Britain is 60 years old. If they get 3 years work out of you, it seems worthwhile. So you can join from 18 to 57. The wages have slightly increased from £1 a week, ever so slightly. And the uniform dress has increased. We cannot strike as a police service. We have not so much a union, we have a federation that looks after our entitlements, but we can't strike. And what happens is that when the fire service or the ambulance service in London go on strike because they're allowed to, the police and the military will step in and they will be your firefighters and your ambulance drivers. We're obviously not trained to the same standard as firefighters and ambulance drivers are, but we'll step in as a civilian police service and help out. And I've put up here some images of London 2012, the Olympics, which for us was a massive event. We built up to it for 7 years, 2012, and it went pretty well. It went pretty well. I never saw the open ceremony. I was in the control room. I went to one event because it was impossible to get tickets, and we were working every other day that we had to make sure London was safe. But the event went well. 12 million visitors came and left happy. Crime was relatively low, and no one really got hurt too badly. So for us, it was a great success. Any questions at all?
You said earlier that you started as a beat officer and then you worked your way up. Is that still how policing works? You have to start as a bobby on the beat and then work your way up through the departments, or is it differently?
It's just changed. So when it started the police service, it was generally, there were 2 commissioners, and they were, one was ex-military, one was a barrister, and you had officer class and normal class. So normal class started as constables, and you worked your way up to a certain level, and the officer class came in, stuck in the army at a much higher level. 60, 70 years into the police, we took that away because it was seen as stopping people from joining. It was seen as creating divisions within the police service. And we've had the process now where every officer joined at a constable rank and they became a commissioner. So Mom Cressida Dick joined as a constable 32 years ago, and now she's the highest ranked police officer in Britain. We've just changed it. We've just changed it, and now what we've done in the last 4 years to try and attract talent that might not come to the police service at 18, 19, 20, 21, we've said you can join at different ranks. You can come as an inspector or a superintendent, quite a managerial rank, and you can enter as a direct entrant. So we've had people join recently who used to be bank managers, HR managers, head teachers, don't get any ideas, and they will come and join the police service to start a new career. And they'll do it as a second or third career. Very common now. We've also just brought in detective direct entry. So 80 officers a year, 80 out of a force of 32,000 is not a lot, but it's a start. We're going out into industry, into academia, and looking for talented individuals who have got skills. And say, do you want to join the police as a detective? You don't have to go on the beat, because that puts some people off. You can come straight into a detective training facility where we'll introduce you slowly to major crime work. Particularly useful where you've got computer expertise or forensic expertise or your great interpersonal skills. We'll see how it pans out in the next 5 years, if these officers stay or not, but it's a way to try and attract more talent in. When I joined for a 30-year career. They've changed that on me, I've got to 38 now. But people now don't join the career for 30, 40 years so much. The generation here, you'll be lucky enough to work 3 or 4 careers if you want. You can do anything you want now, can't you? 3, 4, 5 careers, not unheard of. I've had cops come and work for me in London. They'll do 5 years with me, become fraud investigators, almost like detectives. Then they go to work somewhere else. One went into teaching, one went to work for a fraud investigations bank, another one's travelled the world and come back and gone into farming. It's all life skills, so we don't have to own you for 30, 40 years now, which means we're attracting a really more diverse community now. Yes?
I wanted to ask about, particularly with Brexit, the links between what happens with the British police force or London, probably in particular, and what's going to happen now with working with other police forces on the continent.
Okay.
Is there still going to be a kind of a freedom of information, so to speak, between the two?
I was waiting for the Brexit question, thank you very much. You don't get a prize for that. It's okay. No. Right, so Brexit. Brexit looks like it's going to come in about a year's time. There's a phrase we use in the police service that cops are cops the world over. We'll make it work. I'm here before Brexit, I'll be here after Brexit. What I can say is that when cops get out of bed in the morning, you've got one vision, and that is to do your job to the best of your ability because you love it. We generally love our jobs, most of us. Nearly all of us love our jobs. And we always try to find a way to succeed. So right now, I'm working under a common law system in England and Wales, which has got different rules and different legal challenges to Scotland. Very different rules, legal challenges to Italy, Malta, Albania. Very different. But we make it work. And we've been making it work for over 100 years. So just like before the EU, we made policing work, we'll make it work. Should Britain leave the EU, we'll still make it work. But it will be a challenge. But just to reassure you all, we're obviously all thinking about it. And we're obviously all trying to do what we can to put in place procedures and steps so that there's a seamless transition. But it is a worry. But we'll succeed because no matter what your political persuasion or how you voted, you all agree that bad people should go to prison or should be incarcerated, and that the streets should be safer for our kids. We all agree that. So, we'll be okay. Brexit question, I was waiting for that. Anything from anyone else at all? Haven't forgotten your badge.
Oh, thank you.
You knew the answer already. Yes?
In the field of criminology, there were a few ideas that certain individuals had physical traits, that would be linked with criminal behavior. I think that was actually an Italian who came up with that. However, off rail that might have been at a certain point, nowadays in the news, they do run these series of symptoms, and I saw one of your slides about lone wolf acting. So how has the police service embraced that model of sort of identifying the individual who will commit this criminal behavior before there's damage and loss of life?
Yeah, sure. Good question, very good question. So behavioural science has been taken seriously in the last 5 years. And it's probably, you're absolutely right, since the terrorism threats got higher, that we started to pay attention to ask, well, why? Why did the person do this? When it's a crime, and they're stealing the car radio, showing my age, stealing the phone, burgling the house, that's for acquisitive crime, it's to feed a habit, to feed a lifestyle, to get money. You can get your head around that. But where we struggle is to get our head around how a person wants to commit suicide to kill other people. We can't understand that as human beings because it's not logical. So behavioural science takes a massive leap forward. What we're trying to do, lots of countries are doing it, in Europe it happens a lot, it's been happening in the States for years and in Canada, and we're trying to replicate that in Britain, is to work with communities. Really to work with communities, starting with the schools, primary schools and secondary schools, so that we can get to know the children early. They can get to see the police as a friendly beat Bobby, as a friendly copper, and they can begin that dialogue with us. Recently there's been a rise of serious violence in London that you might have seen on the press and the news, and this year we've sustained 50 murders in London this year. That is really high. We even took New York, which was in the press last week. It's been quite a moment. And there's been a big discussion in the UK last 2 weeks regards we need to get back into the schools, we need to get back into communities, we need to work with other agencies, education, health and housing, to understand why people are so disenfranchised and upset and violent. So it's your police going back to a social service, which is what I joined, which is why we're a police service, not a police force. We stopped being a police force about 30 odd years ago, because that seemed to be too combative, too state-led. So we're trying to make our ways from the children upwards. We're also trying to work particularly with prisons and health providers. So when the hospitals and prisons spot that a person's behaviour is changing, there's mechanisms legally in place where they're under a duty now to tell us. Education in Britain is under a duty to tell us if they spot signs and symptoms in their children, in their students, which are causing concern. And it's really just good citizenship. That's all it is. It's not snitching, it's not informing, it's not telltale on people. It's good citizenship because You want to go to work, have a peaceful day, go home and be peaceful. When you see something that's out of the ordinary, violent or extreme, then you're doing your citizenship thing to report it. But big change in behavioural science. We're not quite at the level where we see on CSI, where we've got the behavioural scientists that go around with the police officers, telling the police officers what to do. We're not quite at that level yet in Britain. It's probably because British police are very independent, generally, but we're open-minded now. So we do engage with criminal psychologists, and we do engage with doctors and professors post a person's conviction. They have to do an assessment of a person. It's called a post-sentence report to identify what the causes were, how we can stop the causes happening again, and what you can do to help that person. Because just putting them in prison, in my opinion, is not the answer. That's not rehabilitation, in my opinion. Yes?
I was also picked up on the New York-London comparison, and I was actually quite shocked by it. But one of the other things, I think, because I've not lived in the UK for a while, is the fact that there's all being reported about there are police no-go areas after certain periods of time. Is that a truth? Or
No, it's not. It's not. And from my personal experience, the video I just showed you featured Tottenham, Haringey, North London. And that's the area where we had our Black Borough commander under stress, coped really well. We had race riots in 2012, 2011, apologise. And we've had a killing last week, a drive-by shooting where a girl, 16, was shot outside her house last week. I went for 5 years. I was born there. I went to school there. I'm a school governor there now. It's not a no-go area. There's estates which are a bit more tricky, estates where people live, which are a bit more tricky than other areas. But the police enter, we go out, we run community events, we have drop-in surgeries. It happens.
And do people respond to things like drop, or are they seen as being anti the community if they are trying to have a relationship with the police?
Generally they respond really well because people want a peaceful life. And if I look at the area of Haringey where I work, the church is quite strong there. There's lots of Christian and non-Christian denomination churches in that area. And we found that their community leaders were fantastic because they would actually rally people around and say, the anger, whichever book you believe in, no book believes in anger. And so we found religious leaders quite inspirational. So in Haringey where I worked, I had very strong Christian faiths, very strong Muslim, very strong Sikh, very strong Jewish community. Big communities. And actually, they got on really well because the community leaders commanded respect and managed to speak to people in a way that as a police officer, they don't see me as a Catholic or as a Brit or as an Italian, or just a copper. And so, no-go areas don't exist in London, we're not at that stage yet. And community-wise, people do buy in, but you've got to build trust day by day, person by person. There's people that will never accept the fact that the state and the police want to arrest people. They'll never accept that sometimes. But it's actually not as bad as the press make out. Just to reassure you. If you go to London, you're safe. You're okay. You're okay in London. Trust me. So.
Security and terror threats. What's the difference between Italy and London? Are we just lucky or so good in defenses for terror threats?
I mean, just my opinion, and I'll speak to some about this just before the presentation, I think you're good here, in my opinion. It's very well organised and very good. I don't believe in luck, but you make your own luck in life. And in my opinion, Italy's very vigilant. The UK was also very vigilant for 7 years, from 2005 till last year. We had no attacks in the UK. However, you can't police every potential lone actor, you can't police every potential incident. But I think here you're very attentive. And there's lots of things you read in the press of various theories. I think take each theory and put it in a big pot and mix it around, and that's sort of the answer. But if we knew the answer, we'd all be safe with no attacks. A bit like crime prevention. Why do some cities not get burgled whereas others do? But you're okay. I'm happy to live here, so you're okay here. I'm very happy to live here. Last couple of questions before we wrap up.
You have a way of monitoring imams and mosques
Yeah, sure. So, good question again. So, in the UK, we've got a government strategy called Contest, which is our counter-terrorism and counter-extremism strategy. We've got a strategy called Contest. It's called the Contest strategy, countering terrorism strategy. And as part of that, we've got police officers and ex-police officers who are civilians who work for police officers around the UK, and it's their job to work in faith groups. So it's their job to work in faith groups on a day-to-day basis, but also post an attack, post an incident, when the public can be sometimes drawn by what the media writes. It's their job to get into the faith groups and to make sure that they remain positive as well, so keep that trust going. And it's not just the mosques that we work with the churches and synagogues and gurdwaras, we work with everyone. The UK is... No, but the targets might be, and extremism, which is a much broader concept, comes from everywhere. And as a Roman Catholic with an Irish wife, we were regarded as terrorists 30 years ago in London. There was pubs in London that I couldn't go to as a Catholic, because I was told, don't go to that pub, it's a fundraising pub. So, I take your point, but as a Catholic we were also looked at very closely. But no, we work with all faiths. We have to, because London's so diverse, and the UK is so diverse. And let's not forget, the UK is on its third generation of migrant. So, my kid's the third generation now. And so we are so much down the way where we've now married across into different faiths, different religions, different nationalities, different languages. So the Italian ghetto in London, which was Clerkenwell, where the Italian church was, opposite Hatton Garden, the Jewish diamond market, that's where we all were, that's my parents were. It's now spread all across London and the home counties. And so our community's got a bit more spread out as well. So the challenge is on our third generation now. So my kids in London right now, when they go back, to keep the community bond strong. Because what keeps us in common now? Yes?
I have a question around the gangs and schools. You know, I've got friends who work in Hackney and other places.
Oh, okay, right.
Just the business of managing knife crime at school gates. How do the police intervene there to help? Because what you were talking about in Tottenham and that whole Haringey area is very much linked in with needing to be in a group that sort of protects the individual. It's, you know, the need for the gang is there for the individual on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked in Haringey gangs. That's one of the teams that I had. And Hackney gangs and Haringey gangs, two boroughs north of London, were at war quite a lot. How do we work? We put beat officers, the bobbies, and the bobbies what recruited me. My school beat officer recruited me 23 years ago. She's one that said to me, why did you join the police? That's what I did. It was Anne Smith, her name was. And so we put beat officers into every secondary school, so you've got that link. Only one officer, it's a start though. What we do is that the schools, in Hackney and Haringey, we've got schools officers that during the school breaks, they run summer projects with the children. Not all the children go to it, and you might say only the good children will go to it. However, as long as somebody goes to it, the message goes across, their friends see the police are a happy, friendly person, and it encourages people. So we've got much more schools interaction. In terms of, we don't have knife archers in London very often. It's very rare that you see that. But what we will do is that police officers will respond to intelligence, and they'll go to schools where there's believed to be an altercation or a fight about to happen. And we'll search premises quite a lot for schools to recover knives that get hidden outside schools. A lot of knives in London. We're not a gun culture country in terms of it's very hard to acquire a firearm in the UK, even harder to acquire ammunition in the UK, even harder. And our gun laws are quite strict in terms of personal ownership. However, the converse side to that is that getting a knife is easy because you go to your kitchen drawer. You go to your kitchen drawer, you go to a DIY shop, or you go to anywhere to pick up a knife. And so our fear is that people are arming themselves with knives for self-defence. So we've brought in laws in the last few years where if you're arrested, convicted of a knife crime, you face a mandatory prison sentence. Again, not a whole answer, but it's part of the recipe to try and convince people not to carry knives. And the huge debate now in Britain is about stop and search powers. So at the very start I said that police have got powers to stop and search people. And when I was a young officer, I was encouraged to stop and search. and I worked in North London, Central London as uniform officer, and we've moved away from that ever so slightly. And so what we're trying to do now is give our officers confidence that when you have the grounds, stop and search a person. When you have the grounds, and we've got this lovely phrase of between reasonable grounds, that I can stop who I want to talk to you. I can stop, I can ask you what you're doing here, you can or cannot answer me, it's up to you. But I can inquire, I can be inquisitive, I can judge by your demeanour, by where you are, the time and place, intelligence I might know as to what's happening. And from that, it comes to a point where I can form the reasonable grounds to search you. And we're encouraging our cops, when you've got those grounds, do it. But start it by talking to people. Start the conversation going, which is off the phones, and talk to them. Good question though, Hackney. That was right next door to me, Hackney. We had the red and blue gangs there.
I know Tottenham as well, quite well. Haringey, that whole area, the ladder.
Haringey Ladder, yeah. Oh, that's another story about the burglaries in Haringey Ladder. Yeah. Romana. Last question for Romana.
If you're thinking of joining the Met, how much do you get paid?
Not enough. Is the answer to that. Not enough. It's not a career to make millions, but listen, for me it's been a very good career for 23 years. There's some days you don't want to go to work, just like any job, which is just horrible. Some days all you give is bad news to people. All you see is bad news. But the vast majority of days are good days. You go home feeling as if you've done something good. For the very few of us that get to work abroad, it's a privilege and an honour, and that's very special. But for those of us that work in London, we're at the sharp end. So I'm generally envious of my officers that I live behind in North London that work in the sharp end, that work in their shifts in the cars and going out and arresting people and meeting the community. I'm genuinely envious of them because that is what we join the job to do. So,
do you have any kind of undercover investigation?
In the police?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as I know, most police services, certainly we in Britain, have got undercover capacity. And so we'll do things in undercover and covert as well. So when I was starting the CID, I did, as my daughter said, I used to wear shorts and t-shirt, and my job was to go out with my colleagues in shorts and t-shirt trainers, covert officers, and stop people, and talk to people, and follow people. So we do that, and you can see lots of that online and on the internet. It's not as sexy as it is on TV, on the films like Serpico. Having had friends that have done it, it's a hard life. It's a hard life. But yeah, we've got that capacity as has lots of our colleagues around the world. You're my question, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever fear like going out sometimes? Because I know like in other countries like in America, there are people a lot of guns. For example, if you look into some gang lines, for example, there are policemen who fear their work because they could be the children, they could be the lost of the civilization.
Yeah.
Because they could be shot.
No, but there's times that you do get worried. So I've never been shot at, but I've had friends that have been shot at. I've had friends that have been hit. I've had friends that have died in the last few years. I've had friends that have died in car crashes because they were driving as police officers and the crash happened. And then you sit back and you think, but if I didn't want to be a police officer, I wouldn't be a police officer. It's a choice that I made years ago, and I've always been quite happy to do it. When you get kids, you start to think a bit different in life. You start to think a little bit different in life. And I've got a son of 18 at uni now, and I worry about him in London, and my 3 girls here, I worry about them as well here. And you do worry, it's natural to worry. But if you worried every day, you wouldn't go out. If you worried, you wouldn't fly, you wouldn't drive a car, you wouldn't eat meat. So you have to face life, think confidently head on, and by the good grace of God, you just go forward confidently and you'll be okay. That's a good question. I feel safe here though, I must say, in this school. Very safe. Everyone, go on, sir.
You said you don't use guns, but do you practice with them from time to time? How to use it?
No, we don't, no. If you're a gun officer, then you practice regularly. If you've got your gun licence, you have to practice really regularly, and you get eye tested and medical tested, you get marksman tested. It's really difficult. If you've seen How I Can't Stand Still, you don't want me to have a gun in my hand. I can just about drive a car, sir. just about driving a car without crashing it too much. No, not interested. I'm from a family that shoots. My dad's Italian, so he shoots pheasant and hare, and I've been once or twice, not for me. I was rubbish. In fact, he said to me, give me the gun back, you're wasting my shots. That's what he said to me, wasting my shots. But no, not for me. But it's not everyone's cup of tea. Just like I didn't want to drive motorbikes, I didn't want to go in helicopters, I didn't want to work in the submarine unit or in the mountain branch, horses. I really like talking to people, interviewing them, and going to court. I really like that. So that's what I've done. And thankfully, there's lots of very brave officers that carry guns, who I send in first, and I wait back as the boss. Here, then I walk in when everyone's in handcuffs. That's what I like to do. Everyone, you've been a great audience. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Cameron, for inviting me. Thank you. And if you want to take a picture of a hat on, you can if you want to. Or if the trunk's in, you can do that as well.
I will let a handcuffs to the rail.
No, no. So I've only got one key, Toby. I've got one key. I've got one key in this country. If I lose this key, I'm in trouble.
Can I have that?
Yeah. They are quite useful sometimes, man. But yeah. Come in. I'll do the bar if you want.
Can I take a picture of that? Oh, he hasn't got his hand in.
No.
Oh, please, put his hand in.
No, we shan't do that. That's the one point that the key might not work, and then suddenly we're in a really embarrassed situation.